Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the GaijinPot gaming channel. How are y'all doing out there? Sorry for the delayed start. That's what happens when you're feeling a little under the weather and it's raining and everything else is cats and dogs. So, hey, you go with what you can. So, for today's game, or at least genre style, we're going to do an actual JRPG here. We're going to do some Final Fantasy IX. And have a watch of that. Yeah, we'll go with that one and see how that all plays out. Let me make sure I have this set to that. There we go. And hit that button. And I'll have to do a few little things over here as well. Oof. That's rather loud in my ears. There we go. We'll let the opening sequence run. Why not? Of course, I can't see anything right now. I got all this crud in my eyes here. Let's switch over here. Grab the controller. Pull the cable out. There we go. Get the mouse out of the screen. And we're going to just do new game. Oh wow, interesting. Alright, still good. Try not to talk over the cutscenes because they're pretty loud to begin with. So, kind of go over the genre here, as it were. Everyone pretty much classifies these as JRPGs, and the J, of course, meaning Japanese role-playing games, as opposed to RPG, which covers most of the rest of the world. The difference in style, for the most part, is the fact that JRPGs typically have protagonist characters already predetermined. So pretty much all the characters you run into, the ones you actually control, the characters exist in the world as is. They already have some kind of backstory to begin with. In other RPGs, you pretty much design your character from the ground up. So the stats, how they look, the weapon choices and things like that is left up to the player, as opposed to the player being given a character to control. That's typically the difference between what's classified as a JRPG versus RPG. Basic controls, yes, that's nice, good, alright. For something like Final Fantasy, which has been around forever and a day, I think it was like 25 years. It's been a long time. Let's put it that way. Light the candle. The buttons on the controller are slightly out of whack, so it's a little weird. Alright, we'll just do default. Here is your typical battle sequence that's very much associated with like Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest. Where you have a static set of characters on each side of the screen, one being the bosses, one being your characters, or enemies in your characters. And then you just execute commands for each one in your party. There are some differences where, like with Disgaea that we saw the other day, where it actually shows. I need to turn this down in my ears because it's actually quite loud. Where it actually shows the order of how the characters are going to attack. So it shows which position your character's going to attack, the enemy's going to attack, and it shows how the cycle's going to go through. Most of the older games didn't have that. It was just basically there's a arbitrary init value, as it were, initial in well, they call it roll for init, which is basically where you roll to determine who goes in what order, and the game pretty much kind of determines that on some certain values that are preset within each character, and then gives like a bonus or a detriment to the character as well, depending on what's in play. So that's kind of universal across most RPGs, where you'll have an init value for the battle sequences. Most of the RPGs I ever played, you rolled a d20 or a 20-sided die to determine that, and in this case, the game does it itself. Get through some dialogue. Once again, translation left up to however they felt. You could say regional dialect. This has always been one of the other interesting parts of like Final Fantasy, especially for me. I've played almost all the Final Fantasy games, and I do mean almost all. There's definitely a few I've skipped along the way, either because of time or because it didn't actually resonate with me. 8 was one of those. I'm not a huge fan of 8. A lot of people are. You know, each their own, of course. But you'll have characters that always have a reappearance in each one of the series. In this case, the Black Mage, who is also known as Vivi or Gigi. Depends upon which game you're playing. It's had multiple appearances. Then there's also the other part of the Final Fantasy series, which has been a huge impact on my life, I'd probably say, is the music. The original producer is Nobuo Uematsu, who has done pretty much every single Final Fantasy game you can think of. He's not the primary anymore. That's been handed off to some other people. In the case of like Final Fantasy XIV, which is their online version, that's been handed off to a gentleman named Soken, who is very interesting, not in a bad way. He's actually very unique and quite nice in his concerts. But for the most part, the first time that I played Final Fantasy I, the very first one, which was on a NES, from Nintendo Entertainment System from the States, the music has always stuck with me. It's the one thing that I've always remembered about the series, and I have been able to actually go to a few of the live orchestral concerts for the Final Fantasy series as well, and I just absolutely enjoyed them. If you ever get a chance to, and you're into orchestral music or just game music in general, they were rather fun. I think the main one that you'll find out there is Final Fantasy Distant Worlds. And that's their main concert venue, which covers all the Final Fantasies. So each one, they actually kind of pick they have to pick a song from each series, and then they orchestrate it, and it's really quite good. I really do enjoy it. Hi, Doug. Get stuff. Where's the exit? There we go. Apparently I'm gonna do something with, I don't know, this card game. And of course the games themselves have also evolved over the years. So as I said, the first one came out on the original Famicom, for those of you in Japan, or the NES or Nintendo Entertainment System for those of you outside of Japan. The way it worked after that, this is actually kind of a little mini game. We need to get the timing down. So as I said, there's been quite a few Final Fantasy games. Currently, the latest iteration is Final Fantasy 15, which is on PlayStation 4 and on PC. The first 6 games of Final Fantasy, no, excuse me, the first 3 games of Final Fantasy were originally released on the Famicom. For those of you outside of Japan, it was only the first game. You never saw 2 and 3. What you saw as Final Fantasy 2 and 3 were actually 4 and 6. Just a little bit of history. Later on, of course, they have actually re-released the series in multiple iterations on mobile platforms, Game Boy versions, and then, of course, releasing some of the later versions to PC as well. So like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10 have all had a re-release onto the PC platform. 11 was also released for PC originally on PlayStation 3, if I remember correctly, which was their first foray into the MMO series. Shoot through that? I can. Cool. And then the other aforementioned Final Fantasy XIV, which is also their online, which is their second online game, which has no connection to 11 per se. There's actually some characters that have been brought over from 11 into 14, kind of a little crossover, as it were. Other than that, they really didn't connect to each other too much as far as characters are concerned. Granted, the last event that they held for Final Fantasy XIV, which is FanFest, that was held in Las Vegas back in November, and they announced a few things. They're bringing another character class and another job class into the game. And they like to do that. They actually been bringing a lot of things from the previous games into 14. So if you were a fan of, say, Final Fantasy VI, for those who know 6 or 3, depending on which region you're in, they've brought in some of the characters and items from Final Fantasy VI and from Final Fantasy IV and from Final Fantasy 7 and actually 7, 8, 9, and 10. They've actually brought items in from each one of those into Final Fantasy 14. It's been very interesting. Of course, the usual mini games they love to add into these games. They have a lot of card type games that they've thrown in throughout the years. I don't want to. Granted, I do believe I have to actually be associated with him later on. So this is kind of one of the things with a lot of the JRPGs as well. Like I said, you have predetermined characters, you have locations that you can go into, but it's in a lot of cases it's usually not much of an exploratory in the earlier games. It was pretty easy to get around. In a lot of the later versions, they've done They've done open world types. There we go. They've done open world type maps where there's a little bit more running around, empty space, things like that. And those are fun. Yeah. You're supposed to float on water, right, Shunny? My kitten. No, lost kitty. Never lose your kitty. Anyone there? Nope. All right. Came in that way. We gotta get the rat kid to show up again now. There he is. Have to trigger the event. And of course, immediately someone comes behind. And one of the classic Final Fantasy characters that appears in almost all of them, except for, I think, the first one, I believe, if I remember correctly, and that's the Mughals. They're kind of a mascot character that has been brought through each iteration of the Final Fantasy universe. In a lot of scenarios, Mughals are actually visible, but in some of the later ones, they consider Mughals to be invisible critters that can only be seen by certain people. Kind of an interesting change. Amazing how you can climb a ladder and carry a ladder. This was another mechanic that they added, is the Mughal mail, where they would allow you, that they would kind of had story through letters. And then in 14, they actually turned it into kind of an internal mail system where you could actually send stuff to other people within the game. But this was the other part of it, the fact you could... this is the mail system here. In 9, it was called Kuponet, or Magnet. But you can also save and heal. That's what they were primarily used for. And this is kind of a nice thing about the PC version I discovered is it gives you a lot of save space. Because each one of these is a separate save slot. And then within each slot is multiple file locations as well. So you actually get a lot of saving in this game, which is, or in this iteration, which is nice. Because I remember this came out on the original PlayStation many years ago. And those carts could only hold so much. Don't mind. You're just, doing dangerous things. Yes, there we are. The original Vivi. How do we get onto that? Oh yeah, there we go. This is the other part of it. There's a lot of times you'll just do some exploration, even though the game's like, you need to come this way. Like, no, I want to actually check out the world, see everything for myself. Get some free money that's just lying around on people's roofs. Which has been an interesting part of JRPGs. A lot of the original ones you would find like chests or vases and things like that, and there would be items inside of it, or you'd walk into a random character's house and search through all their stuff. That just kind of became the norm. Afterwards, there's been a few games that have come along and have taken that and kind of played with it. They've actually made it so if you enter someone's house unexpectedly, they may call the police on you or question why you're in there and things like that. Then you'll have sometimes where you'll break an item and you'll have someone also come after you. It's an interesting mechanic that's been changed slightly over the years for humor's sake. It's a very interesting character design. Such fancy backgrounds. This is actually kind of a thing that Final Fantasy does as well. They like to put these little plays within. The one that I remember the most is from Final Fantasy VI, which is the opera. I think that's going to have to be it, though, for me. I have kind of run out of time for the day. A little bit unfortunate delayed start there. But that's kind of what happens in life sometimes, even in streaming. So let's go ahead and do that. So I hope you enjoyed a little glance at a JRPG style game, and this gets from the Final Fantasy series. There's definitely quite a few out there that are from the older generation, Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior being the two major ones for years and years. There's more out there now, but those were the primary ones from a long time ago. Hope you do enjoy. Hope you have a wonderful day, and with that, I am going to head on out. So until the next time, take it easy, and I'll see you again. So bye for now.